This is probably my first exclusive, and it's direct from the source. What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. This week I've got a lot of interesting Corvette news, as well as I believe I have my very first exclusive, so let's get right into it. First, I want to cover a couple C8 Z06s that were spotted out in the wild. There's more and more photos of these out in daylight as they're doing testing, and I think it's interesting to see all the different colors and options as we go along. The first is a red mist hardtop convertible that was driving around with black wheels. It's got the low spoiler, you can tell that it has the transparent roof, and the photos aren't particularly up close, but it gives you a good sense of how low and sleek this car looks. So I thought those were pretty cool. Next up, we have another Elkhart Lake blue metallic car, which was out driving on the highway. The person who took the photos did a really good job of getting a number of photos, and it again gives you a good sense of the presence of the car on the road. There's a couple other normal vehicles next to it. It does appear to have the silver wheels, and the entire body color is matching with the Elkhart Lake blue metallic, so you don't have the black nacelles on the top. But cool to see that it's out being driven, and we're now starting to see different light conditions for the car so you get a better sense of how the paint looks on the bodywork. Next, I want to get right into a subject that a couple different viewers have asked me about, and that's the potential for a strike at the BGA assembly plant in Kentucky. As reported on Corvette Blogger, United Auto Workers Local 2164 has rejected an offer for a contract from GM. There's been a lot of speculation around this and a lot of people kind of jumping to conclusions, so I'm hoping to clear a little bit of that up. First, it doesn't mean that there is imminently going to be a strike or that a strike is right around the corner. The second is that it doesn't mean there will actually be a strike. It just means that the union is authorized to have a strike if they so choose. Now keep in mind, since 2019, UAW 2164 hasn't actually had an operating contract at the BGA plant. So this means they've been operating without a contract for almost 3 years at this point. And for their part, right now, Corvette management is saying that they want to work with the union to reach terms that both sides are happy with. Neither side wants this to fail, so the headline can be a little bit scary, but it doesn't mean that things are breaking down and that there's going to be big disruptions to the Corvette line. Both sides want to get this resolved as quickly as they can, and it's not something that benefits either party to delay. Chevy, for their part, they want to have the C8 Z06 produced as early as they can and as many as they can, and so obviously having delays on the production line caused by a potential strike is a big problem for them. And for their part, the union workers also don't want this to result in a strike. They don't get paid by their employer if they have a strike. Now, the union does provide some protection. They do get $50 a day as part of their contract if they end up going on strike, but that's still probably a lot less than they are actually making doing their work. Both sides have said they want to negotiate and reach an agreement, and both sides will benefit if that happens. So I don't think anybody should jump to conclusions and think this is an imminent thing. Even if the negotiations don't go well, this doesn't mean that there will be a strike. Keep in mind, they haven't had a contract since 2019, and they've been able to operate since. So my hope would be that both parties come to the table ready to negotiate, work out some of the terms, get to the point where both parties are happy and can move forward. Everybody benefits if that happens. So I think this is an important thing to note, but I also don't think anybody should jump to conclusions and think that a strike is about to happen. So hopefully they can work everything out and there won't be any disruption. All right, so if you've been watching any of my videos for the past couple months, there's been, unfortunately, a fair amount of negative news regarding Ciocca. Today, I actually have a little bit of good news for people who have reservations with Ciocca. Similar to what MacMulkin has had for quite a while, a reservation tracker, Ciocca actually just rolled theirs out. This lets anybody who has a reservation at Ciocca log in, take a look, and see where they stand. Ciocca, for their part, say that they're going to update every 1st and 15th of the month so that twice a month you'll be able to see has your position changed if there have been any cancellations ahead of you in line. And keep in mind, as I reported in a prior video, Ciocca's had over 1,900 people back out of their reservations, meaning that if you're higher up on that list, you've probably dropped pretty significantly in position since you actually placed your reservation. Now, unfortunately, I tried to go to Ciocca's website and actually see the tracker for myself, and both times I tried, it was unavailable. Hopefully it'll be back online soon, but I think this is good for Ciocca, and at least it gives a little bit better transparency to everybody's place in line. Now, in an interesting turn of events, 2 new colors for the 2023 model year appeared briefly on Chevy's online visualizer tool. They showed up, they were there for a little while and then were immediately brought back down. The 2 colors appear to be for the 70th anniversary of Corvette, the first color being a white pearl metallic tri-coat with optional satin matrix gray stripes, or a carbon flash metallic with optional satin black metallic stripes. The suspicion is that these are about to be unveiled in the near future, however someone probably got a little bit excited and posted them to the visualizer before they were actually ready. One other interesting twist to this story is that both of these colors were actually spotted in person with photos photos taken late last year. At one of the car shows where Chevy was unveiling the 2023 model year cars, they had a little display with plastic shells of the C8 cars in each of the colors so that you could get a sense of what the paint looked like in person. As is widely reported, the Corvette plant can only manufacture about 12 different colors at the same time due to the tooling and other requirements for each paint color. But there were 14 samples. A few people were able to get pictures, but then promptly 2 of those shells were actually pulled from the display and there was an empty slot where those were. So it's not really a surprise that these are about to be unveiled, and especially that they showed up in the visualizer, but it is interesting. Now, an interesting little point that I'll mention is that if you own a Corvette from the last couple generations and it has any carbon flash metallic bodywork on it, you actually already have one of the colors in person at your own house right now, and you can go look at it. Chevy hasn't confirmed if it's the exact same paint code. In fact, they haven't confirmed that those colors are a sure thing yet, though we assume that they will be. But it gives you a good chance to actually see what that looks like. I would imagine we'll be seeing these pretty soon as Chevy announces the 70th model year of the Corvette. Now for a little bit of dramatic news. In a letter sent to all Chevy dealerships, GM North America President Stephen Carlisle reached out, warning dealerships in no uncertain terms that GM was aware of a small number of dealerships that were adding excessive additional dealer markup, ADM, to cars, causing negative brand image, and that there were potentially repercussions for these dealerships. He notes directly, and I want to quote, "Specifically, it has come to our attention that some dealerships have attempted to demand money above and beyond the reservation amount set in GM's program rules and or have requested customers pay sums far in excess of MSRP in order to purchase or lease a vehicle." He closes noting, "This letter serves as notice that GM reserves the right to redirect your vehicle allocations or take other recourse as prescribed by the dealer sales and service agreement." Whoa, there's a lot to unpack there. I've had a lot of viewers reach out asking, what are my thoughts on this? What does it actually mean? And are we going to see any changes as a result? As with many things nowadays, there's unfortunately a couple problems with this. First, not all dealerships are going to do anything about this. I've seen a couple examples of people reaching out to a dealership saying, "Hey, what do you think about this? Are you still marking up the car?" And the dealers were saying yes. Next, a significant amount of customers have pulled reservations from smaller dealerships that were claiming MSRP up front, but then when pressed, said that they were actually going to sell at market price, including up to 30 to 50K of additional dealer markup. And then lastly, and perhaps most critical of all, I do think a lot of people are misunderstanding what this letter means and what the implications are. First, I think it's really important to note one thing that the letter does not say, and that is specifically it does not say that a dealer can't mark up the price of a vehicle. A lot of people are interpreting this to think that it means everything must be at MSRP, and that's just not the case. After reading the letter several times, I think there are 3 main points that the letter is trying to address. The first is that they're trying to prevent unethical or misleading promotional activities. They're then trying to prevent what they deem as excessive markup on vehicles. And then lastly, they're trying to stop the sale of the vehicles to brokers. One point I also want to highlight is that the letter intentionally uses language that is up to interpretation. This is a common legal approach, and it forces dealers to use their own judgment at their own risk. Far in excess of MSRP, dealers agree to effectively, ethically, and lawfully sell and promote. Dealer will not advertise or conduct promotional activities in a misleading or unethical manner. And it's up to a dealer to determine what GM actually means, and they're taking a risk depending on how they want to interpret it. From sifting through all the noise in the online forums, as well as Facebook, it does seem that there's an overall sentiment that basically summarizes the main points of this. The biggest issue isn't for dealers that have said they have ADM up front. Customers certainly aren't forced to buy from them and can go to any dealership and shop around if they want to. So no one's forcing you to pay for a car above MSRP. The issue is for dealers that claimed MSRP up front and took deposits, but then changed their story, required ADM, in some cases very significant amounts, 30K, 50K, etc. Well after the point where it would have been possible for that customer to go to another dealership and get a reservation down at a price they were comfortable with. It's this bait and switch that I think GM is trying to point out as being unethical and misleading. While none of us love additional dealer markup, it is legal and it's a very common practice. The key point here is that if it's not stated up front, or especially if a dealership has agreed to something else like MSRP and then gone back on their word, that's where there's the problem. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments on this. There's all different sides of the argument, and there are people with a lot of different opinions. But the key here is that from GM's letter, it does sound like this is against the dealer sales and service agreement that all dealerships have to sign in order to enter into business with GM. So regardless of the legality of marking up cars or pulling a bait and switch, it does sound like GM does have the authority to enforce any kind of sanctions against these dealerships, and to take action where they deem appropriate. And I don't blame GM for wanting to hold dealers accountable to the agreements that they have signed. Just like the customers that are feeling burned by those bait and switches, GM themselves is probably feeling a little bit burned by dealers who are doing this and going against the agreement that they've signed with GM. It's too bad it's come to this, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. As I have more news, I'll let everybody know. All right, and by far the most exciting, at least for me, is I want to share some news about MacMulkin. This is probably my first exclusive, and it's direct from the source. This information hasn't been publicly announced yet. I could find no reference to it online, and I believe I'm the first to break this news. And that's the date of the C8 Z06 dealer tour at MacMulkin. I talked directly to the owner of MacMulkin, and he gave me direct permission to share this, even though MacMulkin themselves have not already announced it. So the date of the dealer tour is going to be Saturday, February 19th. So basically a month away. He said that this is the date that his dealership representative told him, and that they're currently working on the specifics. I want to highlight that the reason that they haven't shared the date yet is they're still ironing out the schedule and some of the specifics for the event for anybody that wants to come by. As soon as they have that figured out, they will be announcing it themselves. Now this tells us two things. First is that Ciocca and MacMulkin are both going to be doing the dealer tour on the same weekend. That's kind of interesting because it also tells us that that means there is more than one car doing the dealership tour. So hopefully that gives people an opportunity to see the cars as they make their way around the country, and you don't have to go to one of the larger dealerships in order to see one. We had a great conversation, and it was really cool to talk with him, and I appreciate that he gave me the opportunity to share this with you. And as always, when I have more information and I have more of the specifics, I'll be sharing that on the channel. I want to mention that I just started up a Facebook page called FredsFullThrottle on Facebook. It should be pretty easy to find. And I'm going to be posting things there like behind the scenes, photos of some of the production, and information that doesn't necessarily fit into a specific video. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a subscribe. That really helps me out. And as the car gets closer, I'm going to be doing a lot of information about the specific options on the car, ways you can spec it, considerations you might want to have. So be on the lookout for videos that aren't just news like this, but actually things about the car itself. So thanks for watching, and until next time, Fred out!